Off the bench overtime, ESPN 1045, T-Bob and Jacob Hester talking to Nick Underhill about what we've seen from the Saints this preseason, some observations, if you will. That's a powerful headshot, my friend. Let's go ahead and get into the video.
Football's coverage is out of control right now, y'all. Remember Mike Triplett joining the team this last year, Brooke Kirktroffer as well. They got articles, they got podcasts, they got videos. neworleans.football is the site. Sign up today. Nick, let's talk Chargers. Before we talk the game, though, we're not privy to the practices in the way that y'all are. But like Jake told us the other day, the practices are arguably more important than the game. What were your biggest takeaways from the joint practices with between the Saints and Chargers?
True. I think in today's day and age, I believe joint practices, the practices themselves, are probably more important than the actual preseason games.
Yeah, definitely way more important. I mean, it's disappointing they canceled these Houston ones too, because it's just they set up what they want to do, and you see it. It's specific, and I think you just gather better information. Like, they ran 48-second drives. Like, you can't necessarily do that in a game over and over and just kind of see it, or even set it up even once. So, I think it's just a lot more informative that way. I think a lot of the stuff we were seeing, it kind of just got hammered home a little bit. I know there's some different takes out there. I honestly felt better about Mike Thomas after these joint practices coming out of him than I did going in. I was starting to get a little bit worried with some of the stuff we were seeing here locally. And I think it was more about, I think Mike kind of getting in his head a little bit and getting frustrated, dropping some passes.
Don't forget, when Jamar Chase first got to the Bengals, all the talk was that he was dropping passes in practice, and he was dropping practice or whatever, or dropping balls in practice. And then we see what he did his first year. Practice, that kind of stuff happens. We haven't had the kind of coverage that we have nowadays with practices and really with the NFL in general. If you think about a round of golf, no one really covers the practice rounds or the driving range, because I think it's generally thought of who cares? They're working through stuff. Of course, there's going to be problems. It would sound nuts if we were guys, I was watching the driving range and Ricky Fowler was duffing a couple chip shots. Who knows what he's doing? He may be working on a different grip. He may be trying something. He may be getting a little cute. I think the same thing happens in football, where players are trying different things. Players are frustrated. They know it's practice. It just is a totally different look. So it's good to hear that Michael Thomas, I guess, has worked through whatever it was, but I put virtually no stock into reports of dropped balls or bad routes or whatever people are seeing throughout a practice.
Saw him scream a couple times, in frustration, punch a wall. And coming out here, he started making plays. He was getting open. And I felt a little bit better about what we saw there. I thought Chris Olave looked pretty good the first day, second day, not so much. It solidified our thoughts on Derek Carr. But, I kind of feel better about the defense, too, overall. It feels like something that could be, pretty strong for them this year. I'm still not there on the pass.
The defensive line is the question, to me. That's the only question on the defense. I think the defense can be strong, but it's all about what kind of defensive line are we going to get? What is going to be the identity of that defensive line? Who is going to show up besides Cam Jordan, because we know he's going to be there? Who else is going to be a playmaker on that defensive line?
I need to see it in the games, but I think the information that we're gathering is that it's probably solid. I don't know that it's going to be a great part of the team or a strength of the team, but I think maybe we've seen enough to maybe start to think that it's not going to be a weakness. And coming into camp, that was one of my top three things. But O-line, I'm still worried about. I think that still remains my biggest concern. This game, I was a little bit disappointed with what we saw with Trevor Penning. It should have been a game that he dominated, and I think 4 times.
Man, the reports I'm getting from Trevor Penning are so all over the place. I've heard he's a monster. I've heard he's dominant. I've heard he's sporadic. I've heard teammates don't like him. I heard he goes too hard in practice. I don't know what to think about Trevor Penning. Physically, he is a freak. He's he's a monster. He's huge. But I have yet to hear a report of him putting it together for an extended period of time.
Times the speedy pass rusher for the Chargers, 45, name is escaping me. So I'm just kind of beat him with speed 4 times, and that's just not something that you want to see from a first-round pick. You should go in the game and dominate. I thought he was okay in the practices. He was against Mac quite a bit. Got beat a handful of times, but was solid. I think overall, Ramczyk looked really good against Bosa.
Hell yeah.
That's good.
But yeah, I mean, there was just kind of a lot of proving of what we thought we were seeing locally went out there. A lot of it proved out, I think.
And the offensive line was one of those positions that the Saints invested a lot into, whether through drafts or whatever. But with a lot of young players, I mean, over the last couple of years, you're talking about Cesar and Eric McCoy and Ryan Ramczyk and Trevor Penning, and now it's kind of the situation where someone's got to put up or shut up. It's kind of like what the Cowboys did a while ago, where they took Zach Martin and all the offensive linemen. They all kind of formed an incredible unit. The Saints are at the point now where we're now seeing what that initial investment is going to return.
Nick, first off, I'm glad you survived Hurricane Hillary and an earthquake as well. You probably never thought you'd go to Southern California and have to worry about your first hurricane of the season. So congratulations there. Hey, what about on the other side? You mentioned some of the Saints offensive line and one-on-ones, and you mentioned the pass rush. How did the defensive line do against the Chargers offensive line in those one-on-ones?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we split up field. Like, it was offense one day, defense the second day.
Gotcha.
I went offense the first day. Tripp was defense the first day. And then when we flipped, they didn't do one-on-ones the second day. So I didn't have I don't have a great answer on that, but in the team stuff, I think we kept seeing Carl Granderson show up. He had a handful of plays. It's Peyton Turner, though, that keeps kind of popping every single day. And I've been really, really reluctant to buy into it because it's just been so long.
Peyton Turner's another one of those guys where the Saints rolled the dice seemingly every year on, not a risky, but an underwhelming name at an important position, hoping that they'd find like a diamond in the rough. And we are still waiting for those diamonds to develop. So if Peyton Turner is who ends up being that impactful person on the defensive line, that's music to my ears.
I got to see it. I got to see it in the games. And making plays against the second team is great. Seeing it again in this preseason game, he was back there a few times. He's making plays. I just got to see it, though, in real action.
Again, same. Practice doesn't matter to me. If you told me Peyton Turner had 44 sacks in one practice, I wouldn't care at all. Would not care one bit at all. It comes down to what we see in those first couple of games. I'm glad they're getting the reps, but as far as like results, it just doesn't faze me whatsoever.
At this point, to start buying that stock, but those two guys are flashing consistently. Foskey, and the team stuff kept looking how he's looked overall. I don't think we're seeing a whole lot there yet, and I'm kind of to the point where I'm not gonna expect anything from him during the season. I think he needs a good amount of time to develop. It's just been disappointing that he can't find a way to use his speed even yet to really make plays consistently in practices. So 8 games, same thing. I mean, he gave up that touchdown to stick, just kind of doesn't have the recognition.
Too.
Yeah, man, it's just like there's too much going on for him right now. I think he needs to find a way to slow it down. And, when it does that, I think that we'll start seeing the talent, but it's definitely moving way too fast for him right now.
Nick _Underhill on X.com, New Orleans on football site. Nick, what about Juwan Johnson? Yesterday, I think it was yesterday.
He's looked good. I think Juwan Johnson has looked good. I actually, knowing how Derek Carr has used tight ends in the past, I think this could be a career year for Juwan Johnson. The only question mark is that does he get lost on a team with so many weapons? It's kind of hard to imagine Carr utilizing Kamara, Thomas, Olave, and Juwan Johnson having a career year. But I think he will certainly be one of those top target guys, especially in the red zone. So I think Juwan Johnson's set up for a breakout year, a huge year. He might not be Darren Waller levels of production when Waller was with Carr and with the Raiders, but I like what I'm seeing from Juwan Johnson. You also wonder when you have 4 tight ends on the roster, how many times are they switching him out? How many times is he on the field? I have a feeling he's going to play himself into a situation where he has to be on the field at all times.
Yesterday, so Mario and Taylor love fantasy, and we were kind of discussing Juwan Johnson's potential worth. Do you think, is this a cat they could, like, does he have top 5 potential? I mean, we know Derek Carr loves to throw to tight ends. If you look at the trajectory of his numbers, it's a really impressive jump from year to year. And when you look at this preseason, I've heard he dominated a lot of the, or played very well, had some really big moments in some of those joint practices. Juwan Johnson, where do you think his kind of ceiling is relative to other NFL tight ends?
I mean, I think it's pretty high. And the thing is that the bar on being like a top 5, top 10 tight end really isn't that high. Like, there aren't a lot of, like.
I think he's probably in that second, third tier. I'll kind of disagree. I think there are some really good tight ends at the top end. You have Kelsey, and then you have a big gap. But then you have like the Mark Andrews, the George Kittles, you could even throw Darren Waller in there. There are some star-studded tight ends. And then you probably have the next tier where you're going to get into is Juwan Johnson in there? Is he in that third tier? That would be the question. Can he propel? He's not going to propel himself to that top group. I don't think he's there, and I don't think that's what the Saints want to do. But I could see him jumping to that third tier. Fantasy-wise, who cares, right? I heard something the other day, but it was something like, I'm paraphrasing now, but why play fantasy football when you can just bet on sports? Just bet on sports like an adult. No offense, I play fantasy football, but I'm not too worried about fantasy football projections for Juwan Johnson as much as I'm worried about his actual production on the field. That's all I'm saying.
Like, truly productive players there. So I think he has a chance to be one of them. I mean, it looks comfortable, man. Like that's probably like the main thing that I would take from this whole entire summer is that like him and Carr just look like really, really comfortable with one another. And
yeah,
like it's becoming more and more explosive. Juwan got down the field a couple times.
Thank God we cut to some B-roll. I was just about to comment on this. I was getting vertigo from the background of us flying through a post-apocalyptic. I mean, look at it. We're floating through a post-apocalyptic synthwave neon lights city in the background here. We're zooming around on some kind of hovercraft. I'm dealing with that in the background. I got this giant headshot of Nick. I mean, this setup right here was I felt like I was on a motion ride. So thank God we cut to a little B-roll. Lord, I mean, I was about to have to get off the ride.
Becoming more and more explosive. Juwan got down the field a couple times, and he has that. The receiver background, he can make some of those plays up.
Jeez, and then we got this video. Then we got this video. I feel like I'm watching a scene out of Cloverfield. Who is filming this? Get a tripod. This is an insane. Look at the setup of this camera. We're in between a light pole or something. We've got a stage wall on the right side. The camera is zoomed in. The guy must be holding it like this, just shaking it all over the place. Wow.
Carr is someone that likes to throw the ball there. So I think he has a really good chance of being that guy. And I think he's really separated from that pack of tight ends, too. Like, there was a point where
I agree.
Felt like they were all kind of making plays and they were all kind of bunched together. And, slowly but surely, like, he just kind of, like, just ran off from the group. And everybody else is kind of, way behind. So I think he's definitely going to make a lot of plays. Carr's great in that 2-minute drill. Juwan's built for the 2-minute drill, just kind of the way they do it. So I think he's going to, I don't know what it takes to be a top 5 tight end, but like if you're saying like 600, 700 yards, I think that's something that I would probably place the bet on, and I think he can get there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. We had a log jam, if you will, of tight ends with him, Jimmy Graham, Foster Moreau, Taysom, depends on how you look at it. Juwan has definitely separated himself, and that's why I'm saying he needs to be on the field at all times. We don't need to play this roulette of like just revolving door of tight ends just because we have them. Play the best player, let him be the best.
Hey, what about the corner battle? We know that, a couple of outside corners. We know Lattimore is going to be one of them, and then we are kind of trying to figure out exactly how the nickel's going to play out and the opposite corner outside of Lattimore there. And it's a perfect team in the Chargers to go against Nick because you've got so many wide receivers now, all different years, but you have 3 guys that the Chargers are counting on. You just drafted one in the first round. We know what Ken Allen, we know what Mike Williams can be. Mm-hmm. How did they look against a very good Chargers receiver room?
I think Adebo and Alontae Taylor both look pretty good. I thought Adebo maybe played a little bit better overall. He had a couple pass breakups, held his own, didn't draw too many. I think he had one flag in these practices. I think he caught Yeah, I think he caught one in these practices. Taylor had a couple too. Overall, I think Adebo's kind of outplayed Taylor a little bit.
As far as the cornerbacks, I'm pretty happy with our depth. Like, I'm pretty happy with going against any wide receiver core when we have Lattimore, Taylor, and Adebo. I'm fine with that. I'm not saying that Alontae Taylor and Paulson Adebo are top 10 cornerbacks or anything, but you can't be deep everywhere. You can't have all pros everywhere. But I think that in a passing league, I'm okay with those three as your defensive back, like as that being your core of your secondary.
But I still believe in Taylor's potential and upside a whole lot more than Adebo's, which kind of makes it tough. You want him on the field to develop because I think there's a little bit more there. And I think it is really close, kind of almost like coin flip close, where you can't go wrong with either guy. But if I had to pick one to play right now, I'm putting Adebo ahead. It's the only thing with him is what it's always been. It's just kind of the penalties, and I think last year was kind of weird for him too with the injury. I don't think he ever fully got back to form. But coming into the season, he looked great. I think he looks great right now. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, if I had to play a game now, I would go with Adebo. But if I had to go 17, and there's a chance for the other guy to get better over the course of the season, I still like Taylor a little bit more because I just think that he can be a much better player. He just has to.
Again, guys, this background's blowing. Are y'all seeing the spacecrafts that are zooming in between the graphics here? You see this one in the top middle? This random spacecraft, hovercraft flying. I saw like 4 fighter jets were flying on the right side of the screen. They went behind Nicholas. I mean, this post-apocalyptic neon city seems to be under some kind of siege from some aerial situation.
He just has to kind of, keep slowing things down a little bit. Like the issue for him is just kind of the aggressiveness with which he plays. And that's one of the things you love about him because, when he's blowing up a run or being competitive, I think that stuff feeds the defense. But when it's like a curl, it's just like he's going at it too hard and he can get beat on some stuff like that would change the direction because he's just like over pursuing and just, everything's 100 miles per hour. If he can just ramp it down a little bit, kind of, contain that. I think he can. I think he can be really, really good. But I don't know. Just kind of the DNA of this team right now is that they've been going.
What is happening on the video? This is nuts. What I'm seeing. I'm honestly distracted at this point. Watch T-Bob right here. Do they know they're on camera? Watch T-Bob throughout this. He hikes his leg up. Okay, controversial. Hikes his leg up. Okay, we get a nice stretch there.
Down a little bit.
All right, looking around.
I think he can. I think
now watch the tongue move here. I mean, this is some double X-rated stuff. While I'm watching. Watch the look at what is going on here. We're. I mean, this is some stuff right here. The YouTube algorithm might ban me for showing this. Watch the mouth movement. What is this? What is this? What's going on here? This is me after eating an extra large bag of popcorn at the movie theater. I mean, do we have was this a, hey, we're supposed to cut to B-roll here, and instead I mean, this looks like something out of a horror movie. This is like something you would see in The Exorcist.
Hey, this team right now.
Look at this.
They've been going with.
My God, into a yawn.
It's going with Jalen Smith instead of a young linebacker. It's getting Darrell Williams instead of believing in Ellis Merriweather. It's going and getting out proven commodities on the coaching staff and instead of trying to find like young up and comers. Like they're trying to make sure they're cutting out the margin for error overall, which kind of makes me think in something like this they might go with Adebo, but I can see it going either way still.
Nick, I'm glad you mentioned Jalen Smith. You described him as rangy in the practice reports, and that's definitely how we looked on Sunday. Has he solved your depth questions at linebacker?
I love the Jalen Smith signing. Super talented player. Whenever he hurt his leg in college and was going into the draft, I was begging teams to take a chance on him. He's been good his whole career. We know what kind of player he was before he got injured. He was a top 15 projected pick. He's been good, has been a Pro Bowler. I think he can be a really good starter. And yeah, he has a ton of depth. I mean, the Saints have done a good job this offseason of grabbing good players. They're filling the roster with good players. Whether those players start, whether they get a majority of the snaps, whether they don't, whatever. The Saints are deep at a lot of positions. We're incredibly deep at running back. We're incredibly deep at tight end. We're incredibly deep now at linebacker. Like, we have been bringing in talented players. I mean, it's been a great offseason for the Saints.
I think so. Yeah, I do. And so is like Nephi Sewell, I think, taking the next step. And they just got some decent options at that position. But Jalen is someone that I think just right away, like immediately on the field, it's like, all right, like they'll be fine if
he's a player.
Guys get hurt. I don't think that he's like a huge difference maker, but if DeMario or Pete Werner misses some time, like I'm not going to lose sleep over it. He's definitely somebody that can come in, handle business, and do what he's got to do. And I think
he's a legit player.
Yeah, I think you saw it right away. He had 2 third down stops. He made some plays in practice immediately. He was out there sideline to sideline a little bit, making plays in the flats, reading them, reacting, and all that stuff. Everything you need to see. It was just very much like, all right, this guy's a pro. Like, it's handled, it's settled. They're good to go if something happens.
Nick, the story that we actually haven't even mentioned on the show yet, and it's just, I don't, because I don't know really what to make of it. What is the latest on Jimmy Graham, and kind of set up what is official thus far in terms of what happened to him over the weekend?
I haven't talked about this story. I have no idea what happened. The story first reported he was arrested. Then it was reported that he had a medical incident that led to his arrest. Then I heard it was some kind of seizure. I'm not sure how an arrest plays into that. I haven't really covered it because I don't know. And the last thing I want to do on this channel is speculate. I'm here to provide you with my insight on this kind of stuff. And, but that's all I know of it, is that there was a medical incident which led to an arrest. And so hopefully Nick has more information on that. But then I heard he was back at practice like 2 days later. So, I mean, it is a wild bunch of headlines.
I mean, apparently he's doing okay. He was at the game. He watched the game from the stadium. So I think it's not something that, like, where he's, like, in a danger zone, like where something else is going to happen. I think they feel okay about where he's at. Sounds like he's getting better. Honestly, kind of a weird situation. You ask people, there isn't a lot being said. So I don't know. Like, honestly, it's some kind of waiting and seeing and waiting for them to put the information out there. If a guy had a seizure, like, that's just not something that I'm digging too hard on. It's like, is he all right? Yeah, all right. So what's going on?
Yeah.
If you aren't getting a whole lot of answers, like, you just kind of leave some stuff like that alone. But I think he's doing all right. Hopefully he'll be able to continue doing everything he wants to do. And if that's playing football, hopefully, it's all good and he can do that. But yeah, I haven't really heard anything. So I don't know. It's kind of a surprising situation, and hopefully he's doing all right.
Nick, all right, to wrap up here, have you seen enough out of this Saints team in this preseason?
Yeah, I think so. From what I've seen, practice-wise, preseason-wise, I think we're fine. I think we've seen nothing but positive stuff, especially out of players that you had questions about. I think Mickey Loomis has addressed some holes by bringing in some players. And then that, when you throw in the fact that, going into the season, there was a question mark about our quarterback. There was a question mark about Kamara's legal situation. There was a question mark about some depth of positions. And then all of a sudden you see now it's like Derek Carr comes in. Alvin Kamara gets his stuff handled. The suspension has been handed down. Not that big of a deal. We sign multiple players at multiple positions, Jamal Williams and Jalen Smith and whoever else. Like we have addressed seemingly every single roster question we had. The only question that I have remaining is the ability of our coaching staff. That's it. And if they show in the first couple of games, in the first 4 weeks, 5 weeks, that they've addressed that, and they know that they're under a microscope and they're better, then I said the Saints are a dark horse team for the NFC Championship, and they are a dark horse team for the 1 seed. I said that my minimum amount of wins I want to see is probably 11. Minimum is 10. Division championship, like all that stuff. And I feel every single day, every single week, every time I watch something on them or see a headline, it makes me more confident in that. So, yeah, I think it's been very positive.
Yeah, I think coming in, it was 10 wins. I think I still feel 10 wins coming out of it. I think they've shown a lot of what we need to see. I think we'll probably see maybe some more starters this week since they didn't get the Texans game. So, like, if there's anything else they got to figure, or the Texans practices. So I think if there's anything they still need to figure out, we'll see them in this game. But I feel like we kind of know everything we got to know about them. And, the way
agreed.
they kind of moved in this game felt that way, too. Like, they feel good about their starting 22. There's questions.
I think they're ready to roll.
Cornerback, so those guys are on the field. But outside of that, like, and there's questions about Penning, so he was on the field. But outside of that, I think they kind of know everything they need to know. And I kind of feel the same way. It's just they're strong at the top. I think a little weak behind them. You got to hope for health. And if they stay healthy, I think they can get the time.
Agreed.
Man, I cannot wait. neworleans.football.
I think when you look at a lot of teams around the NFL, even some of the good teams like the Bengals, there's a lot of question marks going into the season. I don't think the Saints had that. I'm expecting the Saints to start strong. I'm really expecting a 4-0, 5-1, 4-1 kind of start. I'm expecting wins. I'm expecting we take care of business against the bad teams. You know, we start off with Tennessee in the Dome, like Carolina on Monday Night Football. We play the Packers, the Bucks, and the Patriots. So I'm expecting us to take care of those teams. We're better than those teams. Those teams are in flux. Those teams have a lot to figure out. And I think we're in a comfortable rhythm. From what I've seen, we're kind of playing like a team would play in the middle of the season. We seem to be clicking. So that needs to manifest itself in wins and in results. Let me know in the comments below what you think about Nick's kind of review of the offseason here. Thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. And I will see you in the next video.